Russia. Conscription via digital means will make it harder to avoid serving. By allowing electronic conscription notices, the Russian government has made it simpler to draft men into the army. Until recently, draftees had to physically receive and sign paper summons in order for them to be valid. Once posted to the government's electronic services portal, Gosuslugi, digital notices will be legally binding. Even if a draftee declines to sign, we will now consider paper notices delivered if sent via registered mail. Information from various state departments will be used to create a list of citizens who are legally able to enlist in the military. Draftees will not need to physically appear at military recruitment centers for registration. On Tuesday, the lower house of parliament, the State Duma, passed amendments to conscription law that were subsequently signed into law by President Vladimir Putin on Friday. A Russian lawyer assured me, "It will all be very simple." Ivan Pavlov, a Russian lawyer and human rights activist, assured DW that everything would go smoothly. Once upon a time, in order to get a potential recruit to show up at the military recruitment office, you had to track him down and physically hand him a summons. He said it could be challenging at times, and that there were many ways to avoid receiving a summons. He elaborated on why mandatory military service was a good way to enlist men in the army, saying that the government had realized the procedure didn't work if a large number of conscripts were required. Contracts will be compelled upon them, then shipped off to war, he said. He predicted that once the law was enacted, there would be little people could do to avoid being drafted. The only way out is to get out of the country as fast as you can, but time is of the essence. Vladimir Simlyansky, chief of the main organization and mobilization directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, made this claim at the end of last month. He said that in preparation for the upcoming annual spring draft, the number of registration locations and instructors had been increased. Males in Russia can sign a short-term contract with the Ministry of Defense and join the armed forces as early as age 18. Conscripts and career soldiers aren't the only ones fighting in Ukraine right now. Contract soldiers are there, too. According to a March report from Bloomberg News, the Kremlin plans to hire 400,000 contract soldiers this year to increase troop numbers. Consequences for absenteeism of recruits. Men who ignore their military draft notices will face temporary penalties under recent changes to the conscription law. From the date they received the summons, they are no longer allowed to leave Russia. The reporting period for conscripts is 20 days. They will be ineligible for loans and unable to register a vehicle, business, or piece of property if they miss the deadline. They may also lose access to social services, although this decision will be made at the state and local levels. According to the Telegram channel Mazam Obyashnit, we can explain, millions of Russians who have left the country will lose their rights, because of the restrictions. It explained that many of them wouldn't be aware of digital draft notices or receive them by registered mail because they didn't have a Gosuslugi account. However, they will no longer be able to legally transact Russian assets. They will have trouble selling their car and getting a passport. Combining data from various state sources, the consolidated list of draftees mandated by the changes will be compiled using data from existing state databases. Place of residence, tax ID numbers, phone numbers, and driver's license numbers will all be stored in the register, and in the future, ministries, tax authorities, universities, and even, in some cases, employers will be required to share this information. As the saying goes, generally accessible. Notices of subscription will be generated automatically and counted as served 1 week later if they have not been delivered by hand. Simlyansky, a member of the General Staff, stated in March that the new format had been used to register conscripts in Russia this year. He explained that federal, regional, and municipal authorities had provided digital data that was used in paper form by military recruitment offices. He also stated that as of April 1, both electronic and paper draft notices would be sent out to the 700,000 young men born in 2006 who are currently registered in the military. Many people think the new laws are being passed in anticipation of another mobilization drive. Hundreds of thousands of Russians fled the country after Putin announced a partial mobilization in September. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for the Kremlin, has denied that Russia is planning a second mobilization. He explained that the purpose of the register and the electronic summons was merely to keep track of new recruits. Men in Russia's draft age range of 18 to 27 will be called up between April 1 and July 15 this year. The State Duma has been presented with a bill to increase the age of conscription, but it has not been passed at this time.